What up guys, it's Cheap Pie, back with another video. This time it's going to be about a little discussion of mine where I wanted to talk about some tech cards which I feel like are interesting for the current format. And the cards which I'm talking about, I will tell you right away, are Ultimate Slayer, Dominus Purge and Super Polymerization. It's known that these cards are good, but I want to go a little deeper into it. The format is basically Yubel is the best deck, and some Snake Eye variants are close behind it, and there are even some Yubel Snake Eye hybrids running around. The main objective of everybody is to defeat Yubel, and by doing so not sacrifice all the other matchups, because then your win rate will just drop even though yours against Yubel is really high. I for myself played a lot of Yubel. I played it at the European Championship. Maybe I find my list on Neuron which I can show here, and I'm still playing Yubel a lot of the time, and I feel like I'm really comfortable with the deck. I'm really good at it. I know the lines, all the lines to know, to play around different things. And this is like the big strength of the deck, which is like going first is like super ignorant and can put up all the annoying things, and the end board is basically an FTK, or like board breakers are not really good at it, like at beating it, and then even then you need like picture perfect hands and like perfect engine starters to even extend through the plays. And since it can be made with like 2 starters, the perfect board, they will usually have like 1 to 2 hand traps, maybe more, maybe 3, depends on the Necro Crypt lines if they go with. So, the cards I wanted to talk about. And also Kashtira Unicorn in some sort of way. If you want to think about beating Yubel, there is one thing that's interesting in particular, and I feel like it isn't used enough, and it is to stop the Yama. It is known that Imperm on Yama is a good play, but I also understand that it's very tempting to Imperm the Dark Beckoning Beast or maybe the Spirit of Yubel. I don't personally like Imperming the Samsara de Lotus. I never felt like I lost against it, if played correctly, unless it's like my only starter, but then you could have thrown the Imperm wherever you want to. The only argument against like hitting the Spirit is like, oh, they can make Phantom after that. But the base thing is like that only is relevant for the 1-card combo. If they have another extender, then you're basically screwed either way. Then it's not going to matter. As mentioned, Imperm on Yama is really good, and so is Dominus Purge on Yama. You could also hit the Spirit of Yubel to deny them the Nightmare Pain access, which I am a really big fan of. Basically, the thing is like Dominus Purge cannot be stopped by Phantom of Yubel. Surprise, it's a trap card. So the thing is, if you hit the Yama, let's think through it real quick. Base idea is like, if they don't have the Sharara, they will miss a pop on the Spirit, and they will miss the trap. Meaning, most likely, they are not able to use the Yama to reborn something because they are missing an opportunity to pop something. Under the assumption that they do the Yubel stuff before going into Yama, and also they did not hot draw the Shavara. But either way, if they hot draw, you're basically screwed. If the Shavara is missing, the only other pop in the deck they have is the Grave Scrimmer, which should be used before they go into the Yama, unless they go very specific funky lines. But basically, the usual line they should be going is they should be going into the Yama before the sequence if they have enough starters, including Yubel cards. So they have the Sharara for the sequence in case this gets impermed. This is like the basic game plan. But once you start testing against Yubel, you can see by the way they play out their hand a different pattern. So you know basically in which order the combo will be, because basically it's always the same combo, but the order changes up quite a bit, depending on what cards you want to play around and such. Hitting the Dominus Purge on the Yama or the Spirit of Yubel is really good, especially they cannot dodge the Spirit of Yubel. So if you're really scared by Nightmare Pain and you're trying to deny them some follow-up, you could hit that, but I personally would almost always hit the Yama, especially if they're playing a version with Escape of the Unchained. If they're playing Chamber, you could maybe hit the Spirit, because if they have a Soul of Rage on board or in the graveyard, doesn't really matter too much. But the nice thing of hitting the Shavara is most likely they won't get to the Varutras. So, Dominus Purge is a good card, but what about Super Polymerization and Ultimate Slayer? As mentioned, board breakers aren't really too good against the deck, except you're able to weaken the board beforehand, which is weird because against Snake Eye, for example, we were like, okay, you either have to hand trap it or to board break it. There is no combination, no in between. For Yubel, it's kind of different, because the lines of Yubel have some cards, most likely extra deck cards like Yama, Sequence, and all that good stuff, which accomplish very specific things. Meaning, you can hold hand traps to hit those specific things, like the Yama as mentioned. The only thing making it hard is the Phantom of Yubel. In general, there is some combination you can do to use the board breaker. For example, like if you're able to Ash a Lotus, they can still play with Fiendsmith cards and such, but then they have like the weak board, the one card combo board, which is still strong, but it's breakable. Board breakers such as Ultimate Slayer or Super Polymerization to do that. And in general, those two cards have one thing in common, meaning they get some guaranteed value no matter what your opponent does. Because Slayer can send either Antis or the Trouble Sunny, which is the evil twin link monster. I'm personally a huge fan of it. I don't care about the brick, I just like the power level the card provides. But in general, the thing is, like, you can send the Antis, and even though they could be using their Desiree negate by chaining something to it, you definitely get some value out of the card, because you send something for cost, and by Super Polymerization it's non-respondable, so it's really good at that. Okay, what we've established right now is you could be playing a deck with Super Polymerization in the main deck, Dominus Purge, and then you have other things. Like Impermanence. You will most likely play Ash Blossom because you have to Ash the Nightmare Throne or the Lotus, so this card has too much potential on its own. One thing I also want to mention is please don't Ash the Fiendsmith cards. Like, I know Caesar is a scary card, but your deck in general should be having some sort of plan for Caesar as an end board piece, because you can most likely not stop it from happening. But the thing is, like, the Fiendsmith cards are always just a bridge into an engine. Or if you already have the engine, they're just an endboard piece. Meaning, ashing them doesn't really stop your opponent from anything unless it's the only card they have. But if it's the only card they have, you will see in the line they're going pretty quickly that it's the only card they have. The question is now, which cards or which decks can play Dominus Purge? And there are three coming to my mind, which I feel like should be tested more. And if you want to have like a good budget deck, or like some sort of cheaper deck, not really budget, which is Tritron, Melodious, and Voiceless Voice. Those three decks are really interesting, especially like Voiceless Voice, and I feel like Melodious, but I also really like Tritron. Since new 2, the new one card does everything. The deck has more room for non-engine, meaning you could play Harrods if you really want to. You could be playing more hand traps, you could be playing Purge. And the nice thing about it is all these three decks have the space for Super Polymerization with Garura, Mud Dragon, and Predator Stupelia. And this is like the big takeaway from it, that these cards are good. And you can side the Slayer because you also have the space to put in the Antis. You could also side it, but in general, you have this space. Let's be honest. Melodious cannot really play the Super Poly. They can only play the Slayer because they are not allowed to have any monsters on the field if they use cards like First Movement Solo or Ostinato. But they have the Herald of Orange Light to make up for it. And I would still play Dominus Purge and Ash in the same decks, since like if you open these two together, you will most likely use the Ash beforehand, and just having the payoff of having both is really good. Like there's no punishment in it. Like you can choose the order, and most likely you can just shotgun the Ash beforehand. So especially against Yubel and other matchups, you can side it. But as mentioned, this combination is really good against the Yubel deck. But at the same time, by using cards like Dominus Purge, you don't really sacrifice too much against other decks. Meaning, those decks are in general relatively good positioned against Yubel because they have the same non-engine space as other decks, but they have the better hand trap in Dominus Purge. And just by having this one hand trap, which is really good against Yubel, I feel like you have a much higher chance of winning because this one card is really good. Same goes for Dimension Shifter, but this is just the example on crack because this card is broken as hell. It would be interesting if there is a deck that can play Dimension Shifter and the Dominus Purge at the same time, which I highly doubt. Or like, I cannot think of anything because you don't want to throw Shifter in Voiceless Voice. But to come to a close, I feel like this is the main takeaway of cards you should be considering. So all in all, this is what I wanted to tell you guys to maybe test for yourselves. I feel like it's really good. If you have any ideas about it, any questions, please let me know. And also, like, doing this format for the first time, if there's anything that could be better on this format, please let me know. I was also considering going far away from the water and put down some music, but I figured the water would be nice and refreshing. So yeah, see you in the next discussion. Have a nice day.